There was no wind, and the grass, what there was of it in her postage stamp of a backyard, was damp from an overnight rain. Adequate conditions for burning, although she was in a tank top and shorts. If her bare skin got hit with sparks, it'd serve her right. As I step into the back room, I see not a cracked window, but the door to the porch standing wide open, and for the first time I feel a jolt of real fear. I didn't leave the door open. Chris? I call my husband's name just as I hear the floorboards creak behind me, just as the blow comes to the back of my head. Her chest tightening, Abigail dropped the partially torn spiral notebook back onto the chair and quickly struck a wooden match, tossing it onto the pile of ripped pages. Flames shot 2 feet into the hot, still air. "Whoa there. That's some fire you've got going." She looked up at Bob O'Reilly trotting down the last of the steps from his top-floor apartment in the triple-decker they and Scoop Wisdom, all 3 of them detectives with the Boston Police Department, had bought together a year ago, pooling their resources to afford the city's sky-high real estate prices. Bob, a twice-divorced father of 3, lived alone. Scoop, who worked in internal affairs and had a well-earned reputation with the women of Boston, occupied the middle floor. Abigail, a homicide detective and widow, had the first floor. She got along with Bob and Scoop partly because they understood she had no intention of sleeping with either of them. "Outdoor burning's illegal," Bob said. "I'm getting ready to throw some hot dogs on the grill." "You don't eat hot dogs." "Salmon, then." At 6'2", the veteran detective had 9 inches on Abigail in height, and, although he was pushing 50, he could run 10 miles and still move the next day. He'd taught her how to use free weights properly, and he'd taught her crime scene investigation. She'd taught him what it was like to lose someone to violence. She'd taught him that 7 years was the blink of an eye. A page, filled with blood-red ink, went up in flames. As I regain consciousness, I feel the ice pack on the lump on the back of my head and almost vomit from the raging pain of my concussion. "Don't move," my husband tells me quietly. "An ambulance is on the way." I try to tell him that I'm fine, but I become very still as I notice the anger in his face, the knowledge, the awful sense of betrayal. He knows who did this to me. Bob pointed at the 5-pound Folgers coffee can that she had set on the plastic chair behind the stack of spiral notebooks. "What's that for?" "The ashes." "Come again?" "I'm performing a cleansing ritual." "A firebug I arrested 10 years ago said the same thing." "This is different," Abigail said, watching the pages blacken and burn. Once Bob left, she'd finished tearing up the last 2 notebooks, burn their pages, rid herself of their raw emotion. Detective Bob O'Reilly of the BPD wouldn't understand cleansing rituals. He had pale skin and freckles and red hair that was graying gracefully. Only his cornflower eyes suggested the work he'd done for almost 30 years ever got to him. His second wife had walked out on him 2 years ago, telling him he was an emotional basket case and recommending therapy. Instead, Bob got drunk with cop friends, packed up his stuff, and, swearing off marriage forever, moved out, eventually buying the triple-decker with Scoop and Abigail. "Is that your handwriting? The purple ink?" he asked. Abigail glanced at a scrap that had just caught fire. "I use different color inks depending on my mood." "How's a purple ink mood different from, say, a blue ink mood?" "I don't know. It just is." "What are these? Journals or something?" He seemed to have to struggle to keep the disbelief out of his tone. "I started keeping a journal after Chris died. My therapist suggested it." "Oh." She said to write stream of consciousness without thinking.